The holographic display aboard the TES Archimedes flickered with thousands of red dots. Admiral Jenna Blackwood stood motionless, her weathered face illuminated by the strategic overlay of the approaching Drylac Armada. After 20 years of commanding Earth's defense fleet, she had never seen anything like this. The alien vessels moved in perfect geometric formations, their crystalline ships glinting like stars against the void. They're maintaining textbook Karash pattern attack positions, Admiral Lieutenant Hassan reported, his fingers dancing across the tactical console, just like their training manuals indicated. A slight smile crossed Blackwood's face. The Drylac Empire had existed for 10,000 years, perfecting their military doctrine into an art form. Their ships moved with mathematical precision, each vessel knowing its exact place in the grand dance of battle. It was beautiful, really. And that would be their undoing. "Status of Operation Trojan Horse," she asked, never taking her eyes off the display. "All sensor ghosts are in position," Hassan confirmed. "The quantum duplicators are functioning at 98% efficiency. They won't be able to distinguish our real ships from the projections." The bridge crew worked in focused silence, the only sounds the soft beeping of instruments and the low hum of the fusion drives. Humanity had been preparing for this moment ever since their first stealth probes detected the Drylac expansion toward Earth space. While the aliens perfected their formations over millennia, humans had spent centuries mastering the art of deception. "The Drylac commander is hailing us," Communications Officer Rivera announced. "They're demanding our immediate surrender." Blackwood straightened her uniform. "Put them through." The holographic display shifted, revealing the imposing figure of Supreme Commander Vex Thor. Like all Drylac, his crystalline exoskeleton refracted light in mesmerizing patterns, and his 4 eyes glowed with barely contained disdain. "Admiral Blackwood," the alien's translated voice resonated through the bridge. "Your species' reputation for cleverness is noted, but surely you see the futility of resistance. My fleet outnumbers yours 10 to 1. Surrender now, and we will grant your people protectorate status within the Empire." "An interesting proposition, Commander," Blackwood replied, maintaining perfect composure. "But I'm afraid I'll have to decline. You see, while your people spent 10,000 years perfecting your formations, we spent our time learning something far more valuable." "And what would that be?" Vex Thor's tone dripped with condescension. "How to fight dirty." At her signal, Hassan activated the quantum duplicators at full power. Suddenly, the space around the Archimedes erupted with thousands of phantom ships, each one indistinguishable from the real vessels of Earth's fleet. The perfect Drylac formation dissolved into chaos as their targeting systems were overwhelmed by the ghost signatures. "All ships, execute Protocol Odysseus," Blackwood commanded. The real Earth vessels, hidden among the phantom fleet, began their carefully choreographed dance. While the Drylac struggled to identify authentic targets, human ships struck from unexpected vectors, their experimental phase cannons bypassing crystalline shields calibrated for traditional energy weapons. "Impossible," Vex Thor roared as his formation crumbled. "This violates every principle of honorable combat." "That's rather the point," Blackwood responded calmly. "You see, Commander, humans don't believe in fair fights. We believe in winning." The battle that followed would later be termed the Ghost Dance by human historians. Earth ships seemed to appear and disappear at will, striking vulnerable points in the Drylac formation before melting back into the cloud of sensor phantoms. The aliens' perfectly coordinated fleet began to fragment as individual captains broke formation, trying desperately to engage enemies they couldn't properly track. In the command center of his flagship, Vex Thor watched in horror as his battlefield control systems crashed, overwhelmed by the quantum ghost signatures. The humans weren't just using technology to create false targets. They were actively learning and adapting their phantom patterns based on Drylac response protocols. "Their tactics make no sense," his tactical officer protested. "They're sacrificing optimal firing solutions for chaotic movement patterns. It defies all strategic logic. No, Vexthor replied slowly, a dawning realization in his crystalline features. It defies our strategic logic. They're not trying to fight us on our terms. They're making us fight on theirs. Aboard the Archimedes, Blackwood watched as the mighty Zrylak fleet began to retreat, their perfect formations shattered. The casualties had been minimal on both sides, exactly as she had planned. This wasn't about destruction, it was about sending a message. Should we pursue? Hassan asked, his fingers hovering over the tactical controls. No, Blackwood replied, studying the retreating crystalline ships. They've learned their first lesson about humanity. Let them return and report that their 10,000 years of tactical doctrine just got upended by a species they considered primitive. As the Zrylak fleet disappeared into hyperspace, the bridge crew of the Archimedes began to relax. But Blackwood remained focused on the tactical display, her expression thoughtful. "Send word to command," she ordered. "Tell them the Zrylak will be back, and next time they won't underestimate us. We need to start working on new tricks. They won't fall for the same deception twice." The message was sent, and across human space, preparations began for the next phase of what would become known as the Pattern War. Humanity had thrown the first stone, shattering not just the Zrylak formation, but their entire understanding of combat. The real battle, Blackwood knew, was just beginning. In his private chambers aboard the retreating flagship, Supreme Commander Vexthor reviewed the battle footage for the 10th time. In 10,000 years of Zrylak military history, no force had ever so thoroughly disrupted their combat doctrine. The humans hadn't just defeated his fleet. They had rendered every tactical manual in the Empire's history obsolete in a single engagement. "Computer," he spoke into the crystalline interface. "Begin compilation of all human historical records. Focus on their military conflicts." He paused, then added, "And send a priority message to the High Command. Tell them we're not dealing with mere barbarians. We're dealing with something far more dangerous. Innovators." Commander Raj Patel stood in the cramped command center of Mining Station Delta 7, watching the asteroid field through reinforced viewports. What the Zrylak saw as worthless space debris, he saw as an arsenal. 3 months had passed since Admiral Blackwood's Ghost Dance victory, and the Empire had returned with new countermeasures against quantum duplicators. Movement at Sector 7, Lieutenant Zhang reported from her sensor station. 5 Zrylak cruisers entering the belt. They're using their new scatter pattern formation. Patel nodded, scratching his graying beard. The Zrylak were learning, adapting their rigid doctrine to account for human deception. But they still thought in terms of ships, weapons, and formations. They hadn't yet grasped that humans could turn anything into a weapon. "Status of the gravitic resonators?" he asked. "All 37 are in position and powered." Chief Engineer Oliveira responded, her hands dancing across multiple holographic controls. "The asteroids are primed and ready. Though I still think this is insane. Sir, insanity is our greatest tactical advantage, Chief." Patel allowed himself a grim smile. "The Zrylak expect us to think like them, to fight with proper weapons and follow proper military doctrine. They're still trying to counter our technology. They haven't realized that our real strength is in our imagination." The Zrylak cruisers moved deeper into the asteroid field, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Their new formation was impressive, scattered enough to avoid being caught in a single trap, but close enough to provide mutual support. They had clearly studied the Ghost Dance battle extensively. "Sir," John reported, "they're scanning for quantum signatures and phase cannon emissions. Their sensor nets are significantly upgraded." "Of course they are," Patel replied. "Fortunately, we're not using either. Begin Operation Rock Garden. Let's show them why humans have been reading Isaac Newton since the 21st century." Oliveira initiated the sequence. Throughout the asteroid field, carefully planted gravitic resonators began to pulse in precisely calculated patterns. To the Zrylak sensors, It would appear as nothing more than standard gravitational fluctuations common in dense asteroid fields. First wave of rocks approaching optimal velocity, Oliveira announced. Impact in 30 seconds. The Zrilak ships detected the incoming asteroids, but their initial response was minimal. Their shields were designed to handle far more powerful energy weapons than mere space rocks. This was exactly what Patel had counted on. They're maintaining formation, Zhang reported. Shields at standard power. The first wave of asteroids struck. While individually they posed little threat to military-grade shields, Patel's team had spent weeks calculating the exact resonance frequencies of crystalline shield technology. As multiple impacts struck in precise sequences, the gravitational waves from the resonators combined with the kinetic energy of the asteroids to create harmonic patterns that shook the Zrilak shields apart at the quantum level. Shield failures detected on 3 cruisers, Zhang announced, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. They're trying to remodulate, but the gravitational interference is preventing stable shield harmonics. On the main display, the scattered Zrilak formation began to break down as ships tried to dodge the seemingly random asteroid impacts, but there was nothing random about it. Each piece of space rock had been carefully calculated, its trajectory altered by weeks of minute gravitational adjustments. Second wave incoming, Oliveira reported. They're trying to plot the asteroid trajectories, but the gravitational fluctuations are making it impossible for their computers to calculate proper paths. Patel watched as his trap unfolded. The Zrilak ships, their shields destabilized, were forced to rely on manual piloting to avoid the asteroids. But their pilots, trained in the precise movements of formation combat, struggled to adapt to the chaotic environment. Incoming transmission from the Zrilak flagship, Zhang announced. Put them through, Patel ordered. The holographic display showed a different Zrilak commander than Vexthor, younger, with fewer honor crystals adorning their exoskeleton. This is Squadron Leader Kexri of the Imperial Fleet. Your use of mining equipment as weapons violates multiple sections of the Galactic Combat Code. I wasn't aware that rocks had to follow a code, Patel replied mildly. But while we're discussing violations, I should mention that your presence in this asteroid field violates Section 47 of the Mining Colony Protection Act. We're simply defending our mineral rights. The Zrilak commander's crystalline features shifted in what Patel had learned to recognize as extreme frustration. You're using civilian mining equipment to conduct military operations. No, we're using civilian mining equipment to mine asteroids. The fact that some of those asteroids happen to be moving in your direction is purely coincidental. Though I would point out that your ships are currently disrupting our carefully planned mining operations, which will definitely be noted in my report to the Galactic Commerce Board. As if to emphasize his point, another wave of asteroids struck the Zrilak formation. 2 of their cruisers collided while trying to evade, their destabilized shields offering no protection against the impact. This is not how warfare is conducted, Kexri protested. On the contrary, Patel responded, this is exactly how humans conduct warfare. We use whatever tools we have available. The fact that you don't recognize mining equipment as military hardware isn't our problem. It's your failure of imagination. The Zrilak commander cut the transmission. Minutes later, the remaining cruisers retreated from the asteroid field, their pristine crystalline hulls now scarred and dented from numerous impacts. Should we pursue? Zhang asked. No need, Patel replied. They'll be back, but next time they'll bring ships equipped to handle asteroid fields. So we'll need to think of something new. He turned to Oliveira. Chief, how do you feel about reprogramming maintenance nanites? The engineer's eyes widened as she caught his meaning. Sir, that's not what they're designed for. Exactly, Patel grinned. That's precisely why it'll work. The Zrilak understand military technology perfectly. It's civilian tech they're not prepared for. Start working on proposals. I want options by tomorrow. As his crew began preparations for their next unconventional defense, Patel recorded his report to Admiral Blackwood. The Zrilak were adapting faster than expected, but they were still trying to adapt their existing doctrine rather than fundamentally changing their approach. Their rigid adherence to proper military technology and tactics remained their greatest weakness, one that humanity would continue to exploit. In the depths of space, fragments of crystalline hull plating drifted among the asteroids, a testament to the day that mining equipment defeated warships. The pattern war had entered a new phase, and the battlefield would never be the same. Ambassador Lucia Santos walked through the crystalline halls of the Zrylac diplomatic station, her footsteps echoing against geometric perfection. The station, like everything the Zrylac built, followed precise mathematical principles, each angle and surface calculated to represent the ideal harmony of their civilization. To most species, it was intimidating. To Santos, it was a weakness waiting to be exploited. "The High Council will receive you now," announced her Zrylac escort, a junior diplomatic attaché whose crystalline patterns indicated relatively low rank. "They request that you observe proper diplomatic protocols." Of course, Santos smiled, adjusting the simple gray suit that marked her as Earth's chief negotiator. While Zrylac diplomats wore elaborate crystalline robes that displayed their rank and achievements, she had deliberately chosen the plainest outfit possible. In a culture obsessed with symbolic display, absence of display became a symbol itself. The council chamber was a perfect dome, its walls refracting light in complex patterns that subtly reinforced Zrylac cultural dominance. 7 high councilors sat in an elevated semicircle, their crystalline bodies modified to display the complete history of their diplomatic achievements. Ambassador Santos spoke High Councilor Vexlera, her voice translator barely masking her disdain. "You come before us to discuss terms of armistice. Be aware that the Empire's terms remain unchanged. Earth will submit to protectorate status, and your military forces will be integrated into our command structure." Santos placed a small holographic projector on the floor. "Actually, I'm here to show you something interesting." She activated the device, filling the chamber with images from the recent battles. This is what happens when rigid patterns meet adaptive chaos. The council watched in silence as Admiral Blackwood's ghost dance played out, followed by Commander Patel's asteroid gambit. Santos noted how their crystalline features shifted in patterns that indicated deep discomfort. "These violations of combat doctrine are precisely why your species requires guidance," another counselor stated. "Your barbaric tactics, led to the first defeats the Empire has suffered in over 1,000 years. Santos interrupted smoothly. "But that's not why I'm showing you these. I want you to notice something specific about our victories." She zoomed in on different segments of the battles. Minimal casualties. Damaged ships, yes. Disrupted formations, certainly. But we deliberately avoided significant loss of life on either side. Would you like to know why? The council shifted uneasily. This wasn't following any of their diplomatic protocols. Santos pressed her advantage. "Because we don't want to destroy the Zrylac Empire. We want to change it. Just as we changed warfare, we're going to change diplomacy. Starting right now." She pulled out a small crystal, a perfect replica of the type Zrylac diplomats wore to display their achievements. But instead of showing past accomplishments, this one projected possible futures. This simulation shows how human innovations could enhance Zrylac technology. Not replace it. Enhance it. We don't want to be your subjects. We want to be your partners. "This is not proper diplomatic procedure," Vexlera protested, but Santos could see several council members leaning forward with interest. "Neither was using mining equipment as weapons," Santos replied, "or quantum duplicators as tactical devices. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our tactics. It's our ability to see new possibilities in old patterns. And right now, I'm showing you the possibility of an alliance that would make both our civilizations stronger." The crystal's projections filled the chamber with visions of hybrid technologies. Zrylac crystalline precision combined with human adaptability. Ships that could shift their patterns at will. Defensive systems that used chaos theory to enhance traditional formations. New ways of thinking about space and time and warfare itself. Your species lacks discipline, one counselor argued, but their tone held more uncertainty than conviction. No, Santos corrected. We channel our discipline differently. You perfect existing patterns. We create new ones. Apart, we're both limited. Together, she gestured at the projections surrounding them. Together, we could reshape the galaxy. A younger council member spoke up. These proposals violate numerous sections of the Imperial Code. The code exists to make the Empire stronger, Santos countered. If adherence to the code makes you weaker, then the code itself must evolve. Just as your military doctrine is evolving in response to our tactics, your diplomatic approach must adapt to new realities. She could see the conflict in their crystalline patterns, the deep-seated desire to maintain traditional forms warring with the undeniable possibilities she was showing them. This was the true battlefield, not the scattered debris of space combat. What you propose is unprecedented, Vexlara said finally. Exactly, Santos smiled. That's what makes it valuable. Your empire has stood for 10,000 years because it knew how to absorb and integrate new civilizations. But you've never encountered a species that could match your power while thinking completely differently about how to use it. We're not offering submission. We're offering evolution. The council chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the holographic projections. Santos waited patiently, knowing that this moment would define the future relationship between their species. Finally, Vexlara spoke. We will consider your proposal, but be aware that any agreement must maintain the fundamental principles of imperial governance. Of course, Santos replied. We wouldn't want to change everything at once. Small changes, subtle adaptations, new patterns emerging from old ones. That's how evolution works, after all. As she left the chamber, Santos knew she had planted the seeds of transformation. The Zralak might still cling to their rigid patterns, but they had seen a glimpse of different possibilities. And like the quantum ghosts that had shattered their military formations, these new ideas would continue to disrupt their certainties until change became inevitable. Her communicator chimed with a message from Admiral Blackwood. Pattern shifts detected in Zralak fleet formations. They're adapting faster than expected. Good, Santos replied. Because we're about to give them even more to adapt to. She sent a brief message to Commander Patel about his nanite research, knowing that the next phase of their strategic dance was about to begin. In the crystalline halls of the diplomatic station, ancient patterns were already starting to shift, almost imperceptibly, into new forms. The war of patterns had moved from the battlefield to the council chamber, but the fundamental truth remained. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their tactics, but their ability to imagine new possibilities in every situation they encountered. Technology versus instinct. Chief Engineer Nikolai Volkov had turned the engine room of the TES Prometheus into what his crew jokingly called the mad scientist's lair. Pieces of salvaged Zralak technology littered every surface, their crystalline components gleaming under the harsh workshop lights. For 3 days straight, he had been studying a partially intact Zralak shield generator, trying to understand not just how it worked, but how it could work differently. The problem isn't the technology, he muttered to his assistant, Dr. Isabella Reyes. It's the philosophy behind it. They build everything to function perfectly within defined parameters. But what if we could make it function imperfectly on purpose? That's practically heresy to them, Reyes replied, adjusting scanners to analyze the crystal lattice structure. Their entire civilization is built on the idea of achievable perfection. Exactly. And that's why they'll never expect this. Volkov reached for the neural interface he'd modified with human bioadaptive circuits. Their crystals respond to thought patterns. They designed them to respond to ordered, disciplined thoughts. But what happens if we feed them chaos? Before Reyes could protest, Volkov connected the interface. The crystalline technology flared to life, its perfect geometric patterns suddenly distorting as his human consciousness, intentionally unfocused and irregular, poured into the system. Sir, Reyes shouted as energy patterns fluctuated wildly. The containment field is doing exactly what we want it to. Volkov grinned, despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Look at the harmonics. The crystals aren't failing. They're adapting, learning to handle irregular input. On the monitoring screens, the crystalline structure was indeed changing, its rigid patterns becoming more fluid, more organic. What had been a perfect geometric lattice was transforming into something that looked almost alive. This is how we beat their next-generation shields, Volkov explained, his voice strained but triumphant. Not by overpowering them, but by teaching their own technology to think like us. Imperfect, adaptive, human. Suddenly, the ship's alert system blared. Multiple Zrylak vessels detected, the AI announced. They appear to be testing their new shield configurations. Perfect timing, Volkov said, disconnecting from the interface. Tell Admiral Blackwood that Operation Wild Crystal is ready for field testing. Let's show them what happens when perfect technology learns to embrace imperfection. Rewriting the rules. The final battle of the Pattern War didn't look like a battle at all. In high orbit around a neutral star, the combined fleets of Earth and the Zrylak Empire hung in space, their weapons powered down. Admiral Blackwood stood on the bridge of the Archimedes, watching as history prepared to turn a corner. All ships report ready, Hassan announced. Engineer Volkov's modifications have been distributed throughout the fleet. And the Zrylak? Blackwood asked. Their formations are unusual, Admiral. They appear to be attempting to incorporate some of our tactical innovations. Blackwood smiled. The weeks following Ambassador Santos' diplomatic breakthrough had seen unprecedented cooperation between human and Zrylak engineers. Today would prove whether that cooperation could reshape the future of both civilizations. Supreme Commander Vexthor's image appeared on the main display. Like his ship's formations, his traditionally rigid bearing had softened slightly. Admiral Blackwood, are you certain about this demonstration? It goes against every principle of traditional combat doctrine. Yes, Blackwood finished. That's rather the point. Shall we begin? At her signal, both fleets activated their new hybrid shield systems, Zrylak crystalline technology infused with human chaos theory and adaptive algorithms. The space between the ships lit up with impossible patterns as order and chaos danced together. The human fleet scattered into seemingly random positions while the Zrylak ships maintained their formation, but not their traditional one. They had adopted a new pattern, one that incorporated controlled irregularity into their precision. What followed wasn't combat, but something entirely new, a demonstration of how two radically different approaches to space warfare could combine to create something greater than either. Human ships darted through gaps in space that shouldn't have existed, their modified Zrylak shields bending reality in ways the original designers had never imagined. The Zrylak fleet moved with their characteristic precision, but now that precision served to create and exploit chaos rather than simply impose order. Remarkable, Vexthor breathed, watching as the combined fleets executed maneuvers that would have been impossible just months ago. We spent 10,000 years perfecting our patterns, never realizing that imperfection could be a form of perfection itself. Ambassador Santos, who had insisted on being present for this historic moment, stepped forward. That's humanity's gift to the galaxy, Commander. We don't just break patterns. We show how broken patterns can become new forms of order. The demonstration concluded with both fleets intermingled, their shields resonating in harmony despite their apparent chaos. In that moment, everyone present understood that warfare in the galaxy would never be the same. The High Council has reached a decision, Vexthor announced. The Zrylak Empire formally recognizes Earth, not as a protectorate, but as an equal partner in the advancement of galactic civilization. Later, in her private quarters, Admiral Blackwood recorded the final entry in her war diary. Today marks not the end of the Pattern War, but its transformation into something else entirely. We came to this conflict believing we would teach the galaxy how humans fight. Instead, we taught them, and ourselves, how humans create. In breaking the patterns of warfare, we found a way to forge new patterns of peace. She paused, considering her next words carefully. The saying that started it all, "Humans fight dirty," was never quite accurate. What we really do is refuse to accept limitations, whether in combat, technology, or diplomacy. And in teaching this lesson to the Zrilak, we've learned something ourselves. Sometimes, the greatest victories come not from defeating an enemy, but from showing them a new way to see the universe. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The pattern war was over, but its effects would ripple through civilization for generations to come. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as conquerors or subjects, but as innovators, teachers of a new way of thinking that combined the best of order and chaos. In the centuries that followed, historians would debate whether the pattern war had really been a war at all. Perhaps it had been more of a cultural revolution, disguised as a conflict. But everyone agreed on one thing. The day humanity rewrote the playbook for intergalactic battles was the day the galaxy truly began to change. The crystalline halls of Zrilak ships now echoed with human laughter, while Earth's fleet incorporated the mathematical precision of alien technology. And in deep space, where the first shots of the pattern war had been fired, a new kind of ship patrolled. One whose very existence proved that the greatest strength comes not from perfection or chaos alone, but from learning to embrace both.